Hi, this is Mike and Thomas. We're on the first and last Nerdom, and this week we are covering another recommendation from Thomas, which I had not ever seen before, and it was very, very interesting. It was Suspiria by Dario Argento. And what made you want us to cover this one this week? I mean, and good choice. It was it was a well, we're gonna do like a compare and contrast with the old one and the new one, but I definitely have a favorite.
Yeah, we
what
we we haven't really done a strictly horror movie yet, so I thought this would be a good introduction. The original Suspiria came out in 1977. It's directed by Dario Argento and co-written by him as well, with his then wife, Daria Nicoletti. He originally started off in Italian westerns. He wrote Once Upon a Time in the West, and he also went on to start filming what they call giallos, which are mysteries movies with a strong element of suspense and horror, a little bit of horror to them.
Okay.
Giallos are it's actually the Italian word for yellow, and the giallos. I forget why they're thrillers. I think it's because the books that they came in, the covers were yellow.
Okay.
So that's where where it came from.
Yeah.
So he started off on those, and he led in from giallos into horror, and I believe Suspiria was his first true horror movie. And he again co-wrote it with Daria. He wanted to do a movie about witches, and he set it in a dance studio, and Daria brought in sort of the fairy tale elements to it. And it was going to be originally, he wanted to do it as a trilogy, which he finally did. He did Suspiria, and then a year or two later he did Inferno, and then much later in the 2000s he did Mother of Tears. He did the first two with Daria, and the last one without her, and I think it suffers quite a bit from her not being involved in it. The last one I've only seen one time, and it was
Right.
probably enough for me. So, but this original one, and it's based on the myth of the three witches. The first one is Suspiria, which is has the witch Suspirium, which is she's the witch of sighs. And
Okay.
So basically, I guess I'm getting a little deep in the lore here, but
No, that's
basically
okay.
the story is about a girl, and originally he wanted to do it with much younger girls, between 10 and 12, and the studio was like, well, maybe we want to do this with older older people.
Yeah,
So
I can see why. Yeah, and
yeah.
this is 1977 too. The Star Wars came out this year, so this is
Mhm.
pretty. I wonder how much cutting, or not cutting edge, but that's such a stupid cliche term. But I wonder how, like it was probably already on the line. Maybe I don't know,
Right.
but
Yes,
different concept
definitely.
for sure.
But yeah, it's about this girl who comes to a German dance studio to be a dancer, and she soon learns that there's something else going on here, and that maybe it's run by a coven of witches.
Okay.
So
Yeah. 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 The I really like the cinematography. The just the it goes. I liked how it was very. I mean, it was what you saw was like kind of like this constant back and forth of from like one scene of fear to another,
mhm.
and I liked it a lot. It had a certain
Yeah.
flavor,
Mhm.
And this versus like the newer one, but this one I kept up with. What kept me entertained. It was very German. So like this guy, so Dario is Italian, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And then this is based in Germany, or the
Mhm.
the movie
Yeah.
scene is interesting. And how are the remakes done, or the not remakes but the sequels? How are those treated overall? Like aside from like
Um
outside of like it was kind of like Ghostbusters, like the first one.
No, well, it's not true sequels in the sense that characters are transferred from one movie to the other. It's basically each movie focuses on one witch. And so
Oh,
they're self-contained, basically, and the first two are very moody and visually exciting, like this first one. So the first two pair very well together. Again, there's not a whole lot of cross references to them, so you can watch one without seeing the other. And then the third one, to be honest, I don't remember much of the third one. It was pretty much a mess. And
fair enough.
it focused on the mother of tears. And
Oh, okay,
yeah, it's again, if you want to seek it out, then you can, but I don't recommend it. Dario, his best stuff is in the 70s and 80s and parts of the 90s. As his career went on, I don't know if he just kind of ran out of steam or ideas or
right,
what it is, but it's became sort of the diminishing returns, so to
gotcha.
speak.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
But yeah, this one, it seems like everything coalesced together to make for me, the perfect 70s horror movie. This one, along with Phenomena, are my two favorite Dario movies, and
okay.
this one's so very visually exciting, and he wanted the color palette to be a lot like the Snow White Disney movie, the
Okay,
animated movie,
that
for it to be bright and
that
colorful.
that kind of makes sense. That kind of makes sense. Okay, that
To add to
interesting.
that fairy tale element. And he picked out a cinematographer that was kind of an expert with that. And he was very experimental, and it's very hard to do in 1977 what they did with that color, where like it was a wash of blues and reds. And it's one of the very, very last movies, if not the last movie, to use Technicolor. Uh, which gives you that rich color. It's a very more Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz is done in Technicolor. It's a very it's one of the best ways to do color. I don't know a whole lot about it, but from what I read, that's true. But they went on they've kind of phased that out at this point, and actually it was phased out when they did the movie. It was kind of phased out in 1965, so they used the very last um um not studio, but I guess the processing place that could
Okay,
actually process
but
Technicolor.
actually could take the film
Yeah,
and do whatever they did
and
to
do it.
make it
Yeah,
Technicolor. Okay, yeah. No,
exactly.
it used different elements that I would normally not think of in a movie, like colors,
Mhm.
like just
Uh-huh.
colors, and then the vastness of space too. I feel like they use
Mhm.
space to great effect, especially with depending upon the perspective of the camera, far, near. Like they did a lot more of
Mhm.
that, which I'm always a huge fan of. When they
Mhm.
because that's like old school.
Uh-huh.
uh, and I would definitely because I saw it on Tubi or Tubby, whatever.
Mhm.
In any way, like I would definitely want to I would want to follow up with this and buy the 4K version of it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Probably on disc would be nice.
Mhm.
Or I'm not sure that
Yeah.
they make a 4K streaming version, but Well,
Yeah,
whatever.
the
You can't get it on Prime.
yeah.
I know that for sure. Like I because I looked at like
Mhm.
buying it, but it said I couldn't. At least
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not
the
firing up a VPN and screwing with that.
right. Yeah, the 4K disc version comes from Synapsis, I think, Synapsis Films, and it's they remastered it with the cinema photographer overseeing it. So that one's one of the best ones. Same way with the Synapsis Blu-ray as well. So
Okay.
that's probably if you're looking for the best visual showing of it, that's probably the best that you could do as far as seeing this movie.
Yeah, I loved
And
it. I I'm not like horror isn't one of my um things. And of
mhm,
course, these all fall under fantasy anyway because there's some element of the metaphysical or
mhm,
supernatural or something like that, which slides it into the the friggin' sci-fi umbrella, fantasy umbrella, whatever you want to call it, speculative fiction, whatever.
mhm.
But it,
Yeah.
I, I, I did, and then I guess this might as well be a transition or to contrast against it. The newer one was all right. It was okay. I kind of prefer the way, and I don't want to give away spoilers or anything, but there are two different paths. I'll just say
Mhm.
that you
Yep.
come to at the end of each one of these journeys. I think that's a polite way of saying it.
Mhm.
And I definitely prefer the first, the original, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's one of those things wherein even the music in that first one is like really good. The Goblin, the group Goblin did the scored the music, and they scored a lot of his movies. And it's I'm not usually a big soundtrack guy, but I have gotten a few Goblin soundtracks, including Suspiria. It's the he a lot of times you kind of play the music kind of low in the background, but with this movie, it's really loud and clashing with the certain kills that are going on. It's very it's one of those movies that's very in your face. The violence and the action is sometimes very over the top, but always very artistic. There's like a kill at the beginning of the movie that involves this uh, glass pane, colored pane in the ceiling, and it's grotesque, but it's also using that colored glass. It makes it look um, almost artful as people are dying. So again, he was sort of at the top of his form as far as um, creating these images that kind of rivet you to your seat as they're happening.
Sorry about that.
Oh yeah,
No,
no
that's great.
problem.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like with what you said for sure. That the 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 cinematography and the way that the sound was, I agree with that. That's a good point of difference between the original, where was it they were there was a lot there's some chanting for
Hmm.
one of that I remember, like for the first few parts of the scene, like where the
Hmm.
I think Susie, the main character, is going
Hmm.
to this academy,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
like I think they were chanting witch or something like that, but it
Yeah.
was just like low key, excuse my language, freak you out, like
Hmm.
maybe I
Yeah.
should turn some lights on.
Yeah. Yeah. The beginning of the movie, she's being driven to the dance studio in a taxi, and she's being driven through this forest, and she's looking from side to side, and all she sees are these trees, and you've got this clashing music. And yeah, you're right. The undertone the song that they whisper witch. And,
Yeah.
so they're not subtle with what's going on there.
Mhm.
But yeah, and a lot of it's dubbed in ADR. In Italy at the time when they were making movies, sound wasn't really that important to them, as far as because you had a bunch of people talking in the different languages. They're like, oh, we'll fix that, and afterwards in ADR we're going to dub it into various languages anyway. Um so you do get sort of at times bad ADR dubbed voices, and that's sort of to me it's kind of the charm of a
No,
1970s Italian movie.
it was two vastly different worlds you had. And there's no fault that I could find for the newer version of it, like with the
Hmm.
acting. The acting was
Oh yeah.
fine.
Hmm.
Dialogue was fine, all that stuff. Everything was fine. It was just like, is it better than the original? To me, no, it's not. Is it its own thing? Oh, for sure.
Hmm.
Um, Tilda Swinton or something. I think she
Hmm.
played like three roles,
Yeah, she
like
sure did.
three freaking.
Yeah.
She did a very good job.
uh,
They again they did it their own way. They did it their own standalone way, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and they'd been trying to do the remake for a few years, and at one point they were trying to get David Gordon Green to direct it, which
Okay.
he's the director of Pineapple Express.
Okay.
Um, I think he would have made a a vastly different movie. One of the reasons why to make a remake for studios anyway is to just obviously make money. So most of the time it's a cash grab. It's not, and they're going to try to remake a movie that made a bunch of movie money to begin with. Really, if you were really interested in doing remakes, you would probably take a movie that had potential but did miss the mark, and you could go
Yeah.
back and maybe remake it and make a good movie out of it. If it was purely an artistic endeavor, that would probably be the reason why you would do a remake. But obviously with studios and everything, it's for the money. But with this movie, this remake, it seems like they gave the director pretty leniency as far as what he wanted to do with it and how he wanted to make it. He's famous director, I forget his name there. He's another Italian director that Luca um, got a Giannomo. Uh, I'm sure I'm butchering the name, but
There we
Luca,
go. Yeah.
yeah, uh, got a Gugino.
Yeah. I
Yeah, hopefully,
Gugino.
yeah. Hopefully he's not watching, but Luca, if you are,
Guardia Gugino. I don't know.
yeah,
But yeah, he did a
um,
good job.
right,
I liked
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I like them. I know you said you liked one better than the other. I do. My favorite obviously is always going to be the original, because that's been with me for decades. Whereas this movie's only been out a couple of years, 2 or 3, 4 years. But I enjoyed this one. I was surprised. I was built up ready to dislike it.
Mm.
But I wanted to give it a fair shake. And I'd heard from reviews that from certain reviews that it was actually good. So I kind of had high I expected the worst but hope for the best when I watched it, and I was pleasantly surprised. The original movie's a little over an hour and a half, and this movie's 2.5 hours, and so it's a very much a slow burn. It
It
does
is.
have the gore of the original. It doesn't skimp on the gore,
No.
but it lingers more on characters. There's uh, if the first one was very fairy tale based, this remake is more grounded in reality. It's set in 1977, and very much, and it's set in Berlin,
Yeah.
Germany, So you do see the wall's still up at the time, and it's very interested in the political conflicts that are going on at that time as well, and it plays along with the story of, and it's still set in a dance studio. You still have Susie going there to be a dancer, and there's a lot of the same elements. It's like the director and writer took the elements of the original and were inspired by them and told a slightly different tale. Actually, probably more than slightly. It tells a
Yeah, this one, the newer one, felt like more like a fairy tale, like kind of like a Grimm's fairy tale, kind of, in a way. And they did take care to kind of, you're in Berlin in
Mhm,
1977, and you know what's going on,
mhm,
and that has made it as a point of fact in the movie.
mhm. Yeah.
Where the original one wasn't really concerned with that. Was just kind of like, this has always been going on forever, since
Uh-huh.
for a very, very long time, and it's just a
Mhm,
thing that happens. And and then there's a little bit of I don't know, I don't want to say anything to ruin it for anybody, but like I said, there's two different you come at two different endings,
yeah, very
for
much two different endings.
sure. Yeah.
In the newer one, there's one of the big themes, and this one is mothers. There's a very with Susie, the main character, they delve deep into her relationship with her mother, and then the motherly figures that are in the dance studio, and the wars, the plays with power within within that dynamic of mother daughter, and this in how mothers don't always aren't always nurturing. They can be a source of power and power dominance, and pulling something or trying to make their daughters do things that maybe they don't want to do.
Yeah, they have like there's a difference in the two kind of schools of thought. There's like
Mhm.
one more of a mothering side, more like maternal, like
Right.
in the good aspect of it. But then there's also this corrupted, twisted version of it, that is
Right.
on the
Mhm.
side here, that is just just
Yeah. And
not
that's
necessarily
mhm.
evil, but it's corrupted, and it's become
Yeah.
twisted,
Yeah.
and it must be, you know.
And that's another thing about these two movies. They're very female centric. There's very few male characters, and they're very much minor characters.
And
There is a character in the remake, that the professor, that has a stronger presence overall in the movie. But he's also portrayed by Tilda Swinton. So
exactly. Yep.
but it's played as a male role, and while they were filming, and a little bit after the film was released, they um masqueraded that this was actually a German actor, male actor.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
They do a good job, and
Mhm,
I mean, Tilda Swinton is amazing. Like, and I'm
mhm.
butchering her name, probably, because
No,
I'm not.
I think you're right. Yeah,
Yeah,
Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton. Yep, Tilda Swinton. There we go.
Mhm. Yeah.
No, she's a phenomenal actress.
Mhm.
And Dakota, I think Dakota Fanning was the
Uh,
prime was Susie. I think
Johnston, or
Johnson,
Johnson.
Dakota
She's
Johnson. Good grief.
yeah, yeah, she's Don Johnson's daughter.
Good grief. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I know her from was the 50 Shades of Grey movies,
Okay.
which I haven't seen, honest. But
Yeah.
but yeah, she's incredible in this. She proved to me that she can act in this. The things that she had to go through in this role, it's and she learned to dance as well, and that's another thing contrast between the two movies. And the original, they were in a dance studio, but dance wasn't a major theme within the movie, whereas this movie, a dance is very much a very big part of the movie. And um the meaning behind the dance. And yeah, so that the dancers really had to be able to dance in this
Yeah,
remake.
it was good. The remake was a lot more polished, I think, in a lot of areas. In
Mhm,
some ways, I cared for in good ways. In other
mhm,
areas, probably not so much. Like that's kind of like why the older version is just kind of loose
mhm,
you're just kind of dropped in this bizarro, weird hotel thing. This
mhm,
palace, this den of iniquity.
mhm.
Just and then and the contrast is a lot more like, and I think that's true. If anything, um, I don't have anything to complain about. I mean, it worked.
Mhm.
It all worked. I
Yeah,
do prefer
yeah,
the shortness of the original.
yeah.
Too long movies kind of
Mhm.
get me like
Yep.
to like where I get to that 2 hour mark, and
Mhm.
unless
Yeah.
I'm trucking on and like, and it happens
Mhm.
like, but
Yeah. Yeah. And
nothing wrong with that.
and to tie it with the original the soundtrack was done by Goblin, the rock band. And then this remake was done by Tom York of Radiohead.
Huh? I did
So
not know that.
yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. I really enjoyed the music in this one. It's very subtle, so it's not kind of whacks you over the head like the original, which the original that was the vibe that they were going for, and this one was a much more more subtle film. The color palette of the remake, the director described it as winterish, which makes sense. It's more
Yes.
muted colors, and that's what kind of what you should do if you're going to do a remake. You want to make your own stamp. You don't want to just puppet what happened in the original. And with the Tom York soundtrack, that plays well. I read where Tom York, just to tie it with our last podcast, Tom York was inspired with this soundtrack by the Blade Runner soundtrack by Vangelis.
Hmm. That's cool. That is cool. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, these are great recommendations for sure. Like I had no idea. I had never seen this before. Like and it definitely for the whole genre, it kind of sets the bar
Mhm.
pretty damn high.
Yeah,
And like
yeah,
just being honest, like I don't know that I've seen a horror film in my lifetime that was made in my lifetime in my generation's time that and this is a wide open thing just because I'm ignorant for the topic and the subject material until I get build up a little bit more of a library behind me, but
Mhm.
I don't I there's it's now I can see why people like horror, like as a
Mhm.
genre more like
Yeah.
it's not just,
Mhm. Yeah.
just body gore, which has its own unique quality in some things. I get
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
I'm not a prude or anything like that. Like I can take
Mhm.
a thing, but
Mhm.
there's a huge difference between that and just doing it just to be its own
Yeah.
thing. I guess it's like
Yeah.
but what about the storyline? It's like
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
just waiting for the next cliche thing to happen.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned previously that I was a bit of a movie snob back in the day, and um, back in the day, I was like, I don't really care for those American slasher movies. I'm more of a European, Italian horror movie guy, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kind of went out of my way to find Italian horror, those Hong Kong horror movies that like a Chinese ghost story. But yeah, in the French horror movie, Man Bites Dog. There's a ton of interesting foreign horror movies back in the day that really kind of captured my attention.
That's
And
awesome.
but yeah, as I got older, I've gone back and looked at some of these slasher movies. They're fun as well. I mean, there's a place for everything,
I
as they
agree with
say.
that. Yeah, I watched the
Mhm,
Friday 13th, and I grew up with that stuff, and
mhm,
elementary school, middle school, like all
mhm,
that stuff, kind of like
mhm.
yeah, Jason and all that,
Yeah,
and they're okay. Like they
yeah,
like they're a nostalgic kind of
right.
jump scare kind
And
of thing.
mhm. And not to say that they're not classic American horror movies. I mean, uh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a mind
Oh, it
blowing
is.
classic. I mean, that one just blows you out of the water. And you know, the Sam Raimi's Evil Dead series.
Oh yeah,
Uh, you've got the Hills Have Eyes. There's I mean there's countless horror American horror movies um that I find to this day. That's one of the things. um there's some people that will say, which at times is me, that there's not any good movies coming out these days,
right,
which is actually fine. I mean, maybe what they're making or putting out isn't for me, which is fine. There's stuff still that from back in the day that's gems that you could still find, like we found New York Ninja
yeah.
a few weeks back there. There's still classic movies that are classics that we just haven't seen yet. So
I
uh,
agree. Yeah, no, there's a lot out there still to be. Well, a prime example. Like I hadn't wasn't aware of this. Other, I think maybe I might have seen a part of a trailer when this was out in 2018, maybe
mhm,
if that,
yeah.
maybe something like that. But it's just nice to be able to
Mhm,
find these new things, and I definitely say that this is a recommendation, and not to say
yep.
like it's one or the other,
Mhm,
but if you have time
yeah.
to watch one, you have time to watch the other, I suppose,
Mhm,
is the saying. But
yeah.
they're they they're good.
uh,
Again, I prefer the original. Like I would like to see the original
mhm,
like in more full quality and kind of like maybe
mhm,
a little bit better than what I saw. But aside from
yeah.
that,
Yeah, and the director of the new one, Luca, he was a major fan from when it first came out. And that's sort of what you want. You want a fan of the original to to remake it.
sure.
You that's tends to work out better. And actually, he had plans for he wanted to call this one part one. He actually wanted to do a sequel that would go into the history of the
Okay.
dance troupe. The it'd be kind of like a prequel, but also a sequel, and he'd wanted to also go into what happens to Susie further on down the line,
Oh,
without any spoilers. But yeah, yeah, it would have been great to maybe see a sequel, but the movie did so poorly that they probably they said that there's no way a sequel will be made.
yeah, that's what I'd heard. Kind of doing a little background
Mhm,
on just kind of understanding the movie and like the build
mhm.
up of it. It did well enough, but not near what they wanted
Yeah.
to like launch planes from or that sort of thing for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, this was a great recommend. This is good. Thank you for
Oh yeah.
it was a good pick. It was I love that stuff. Like plus it's no doubt because I consider like really spaghetti western. That's where I kind of come in with the Italian, in the 60s and 70s.
Mhm.
And one that comes to mind is the Man with No Name series,
Mhm.
um, with
Clint
Clint
Eastwood.
Eastwood.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, those are
Mhm.
probably the best Western of, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like,
and to tie the two, Sergi Leone that directed those, he directed Once Upon a Time in the West, and that was written
oh,
by Dario Argento.
well, that's gonna be. I will be watching that very shortly because like
Yeah.
that would be awesome. And like I said, it has its own quality, and there's a different pacing and a different way of storytelling that I'm very fond of.
Yep.
For that,
Yeah.
it's not. Yeah. There's some interesting things there, but that's probably generational or time based. Like how they acted was a little bit different than nowadays, but not much. But that's kind of that's the draw of it. It's the whole package.
Exactly.
Cool. Awesome. Well, anything else to add from this week's our big main event?
No, I think that's that kind of covers it. We may in the future revisit another Dario Argento movie. Like I said, maybe one of his Jallos, or Creepers. Phenomena. I think in America it was called Creepers.
Okay.
This one is probably not as good as far as story, but as far as Suspiria, but this one is my absolute favorite Dario Argento movie.
All right.
Stars Jennifer Connelly. It's also based in a school of girls, and you have Donald Pleasance, and you have a chimpanzee.
Huh.
So that's all. and a crazed killer that they're trying to track down.
Jennifer Connelly is a great actress for sure.
Yeah, and this is one of her first roles.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah,
Huh.
this one's
I can say this one.
this one's Suspiria is sort of out there. This one's even maybe slightly more out there.
Got it.
in a maybe a different way.
Sure.
But yeah, and the soundtrack is also by the Goblin, I think, and then they also mix in a few metal songs as well. I know Iron Maiden's in there, and it works well for the movie. It's just one of those big over the top. I think it's made in the 80s, 85. So it's very much a 80s horror movie.
Awesome. That's you can kind of get that from just from this little still. You can kind of see the 80s kicking around a little bit, if you're familiar with, if you are during that decade or were born in that decade, like myself. Cool, awesome. Well, this has been the first to last in the Nerdom. This is a big recommend, I think, from both of us for sure. And I agree with you. I don't think one is better than the other. You're right. I think that they both execute that vision in a different way. Though I was surprised, though, the remake, I was expecting it not to be negative or to even have the remote, snobby or whatever feelings. But I was like, okay, I saw this one. I liked it. The longer in time I had seen it, the more I liked it. And then I watched the remake, and it was good. It was good in its own right. It was a little long for me, but that was okay. But that's just a me thing. It's not anything else, but cool. Anything else to add?
No, I think that's that'll do it for us.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll you guys, if you want to hear see us cover anything in particular, we're wide open. If you want to, we got to feed the algorithm gods and make the probability gods happy. So if you can dislike, that's okay too.
Yep.
Comment.
And we have a couple of other shows on Wednesday. We'll have our recommendation show we call the Grab Bag, and then we have our me watching Star Trek: The Next Generation for the first time, which will come out on Fridays.
On Friday, yep, we got covered. Usually is Sundays, Monday, and Wednesday and Friday. We're slowly filling up those time slots. But if there's anything you guys want to see or have us cover, please let us know. And don't forget to subscribe. And with that, we'll say goodbye.